Hello and howdy. Hello, hello,
Hi.
hello.
Notice no one dances with more confidence than a middle-aged white man.
Oh, well, it depends on the jam, I feel like.
No,
No.
this is cool. Hi.
Welcome. I am so excited about this DevReach interview. Hello, watchers, attendees, listeners, if you're audio only. Today, we have with us Peter Vogel. Peter is an independent developer, architect, and UX designer for over 25 years. And we are so grateful to have you on board today, Peter.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to do not only DevReach, but this interview. How are you doing today?
I'm doing swell. And of course, since there's nothing I enjoy more than talking about myself, I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent. Excellent. So tell us, how did you get your start in development and into technology?
Well, actually, when I went to university, I got involved with the theater community in there. And as a result, I managed to fail a course every year. And I went off and took a course in technical theater. So my first jobs were all as a theater technician, lighting designer and set designer and master electrician. But you're looking at 4 and 8 month contracts. You got a winter season and a summer season. I had a wife. We were having kids.
Yeah.
Back when I was in university, I had taken some computer science courses, and I'd always been a big science fiction fan. So I went, okay, well, why don't I see about going into computers? And I mean, it's essentially the same thing. When you're building applications, right? You're presenting a surface to your users who do not get to see all the ugly stuff that happens behind, for which we are all grateful. Just like in theater, right? Nobody gets closer than 20 feet and everybody sees it from exactly one side. And you never actually get to use in theater, you never actually get to see the shows you're putting on because, you're working. Ditto, you never use the applications you end up building for other people. There's a lot of overlap.
No, and even if you do, I recently did a usability test where if you do use the app, you're often seeing it through such different eyes. Like you can never have that true user experience. And I feel like the same would be said for theater because you're maybe seeing everything that's going wrong, or maybe, like
Yeah,
focusing
yeah.
too much on these details that you laid out yourself. So
It's impossible to predict which shows you're going to hit and which are not based on
Mm.
what the people who are working on it will tell you. But I mean, it's the same with user experience design. I have a course that I teach, and one of the things I tell people, if you do all the stuff we teach in this course, you're going to be really, really close. But
Mm.
when you go to do your usability testing, you will always go, how did we miss that? It's just because it's so obvious once your users go, and you go, oh yeah, right. Maybe we should. There was a system I built for an organization in New York City. We had an add new item button, but before you could get to the add new item button, you had to do a search and bring up at least one item in the inventory. And then you got to the add new item button. And we're showing this to a user, and the user went, what if we add a lot of new items just as soon as we open the application. He said, oh, I get it. I bring up an item that I can use as a template for creating my new item. We went, no, we were just dumb. We'll move the add button to the main page. Can I have the template thing? We'd have to charge you extra.
Yeah,
The budget's gone. I'm sorry.
that's going to be at least $10 on the side.
But he just went, how did we miss the? Why is the button not on the main menu?
That is so. You were doing theater, you got into code. How did you get into the .NET world and be prolific in the .NET world? Where was that journey from?
Well, I started off on mainframes and writing COBOL and PL1.
Oh my gosh, how cool is that? Did you love it?
I loved it. I was the person who discovered that in COBOL, you don't have subroutines and sections. You have paragraphs, because the idea was managers would write the code. So it was all paragraphs and sentences. Hopeless, never going to happen. But I was the person who discovered in our version of COBOL, there was a 36 character limit on the paragraph name. And that pretty much reflects my naming conventions ever since. But any case, I was looking to get out of the big corporate world. And I guess I'd sort of always had the idea I wanted to work for myself. Mm. And that meant getting involved with local organizations, city I lived in, hospitals, social services, family counseling groups. And they were all running on PCs. Mm. And that got me into DB2. and got me into Oracle for PCs for the hospital. And then Access came out. Microsoft Access came out, and it was like $99 or less, maybe only like $50. And I went, we can do everything we want and a whole bunch more if we switch over to Microsoft Access. So we did. And it's been all downhill since there. Actually, I needed to learn VBA. And one of the reasons we end up with Access is I went into the local computer store to buy a book on VBA. No, to buy a book on Visual Basic. And the best book, the most comprehensive book I could discover was Microsoft Access book, which was 80 or 90% devoted to VBA. And so that's how I learned Visual Basic. And I had to pick up forms on the side. And then when I started writing for various magazines, part of, marketing and getting out into the world, I started writing for a bunch of Microsoft-oriented magazines, and then I started writing stuff for Microsoft. I think some of my stuff is still on the MSDN site, though it's all very old and out of date now, very much like myself.
No, I mean, we honestly, we've got a comment from Cindy saying, loving this interview. And I just want to let you know that you are an amazing interviewee. Like, you're just so, like, you tell stories and you weave these pictures in people's heads. Like, it's, if you like write code as well as you speak, I see how you've
well, let's go with that assumption.
So well.
I like that assumption. We'll go with, let me tell you the exact moment I got started with .NET, and it was .NET framework. I was presenting at a conference, and I walked up onto this, as I remember in the hotel, it was this sort of ramp bridging two parts of the hotel, and there was a guy there who was handing out writing assignments to the regular crowd of Microsoft writers. And at that point, I hadn't written anything for Microsoft. And Ken Getz, who's one of the world's most wonderful human beings, he died 3 or 4 months ago, sadly. But Ken Getz was standing there, and he said, and he was talking to the guy handing out the assignment. He said, well, I don't want to do that. I just want to do that. He turned around and he pointed to me and said, get Vogel to do it. And I went, what are we doing? And what's it about? And he said, the magic words. He said, it's 50 cents a word. I said, I'm your guy. And now I had to learn the .NET framework. And that opened up a whole new area of my consulting practice. And all of a sudden I was getting work because if you write articles about it, you must know about it. All of a sudden I was getting work at .NET framework. And as I say, all downhill from there.
That's awesome. So that's how you got into the .NET world, but what about UX? Has that always been a part of your story? Like, where does your passion for UX development stem from?
I eventually ended up as the head of an IT department for a large multinational heavy equipment manufacturer that's now part of Vogel Heavy Equipment. And I was noticing that we were creating these applications, and then we had to go out and train our users. And I went and sat down with one of our users, a bright, clever person, and walked through the new application. And there were all these things where she stumbled or it wasn't obvious what was going to her at any rate, what was going to happen. So I wrote them all down.
Right.
And I took them around to the developer, who, by the way, fabulous developer, just an amazing guy. Side note, when we went to handle the 4-digit year, Wayne was pressuring to go to a 5-digit year because he didn't want to do this again. Which, given the fact that he rode a motorcycle, shows a lot more faith in his longevity than I think. Anyway, so I took this list to him and I handed it to him. And I said, these are sort of the issues we found. And he said, well, you obviously got the stupidest person in the world to test my application. Right. And and if I'd gotten a whole bunch of people, the response would have been different. If I'd had a whole bunch of people had the same problems, usability testing, right?
You think it would have been taken better? Like, if
it would have been, you got the stupidest people in the world.
Yes. Okay, yeah.
Nobody has ugly children, right? And if you know how it works, you know how it works. Right?
Oh my gosh.
But the people who the term I always use, the people we're inflicting our systems on, don't know how it works. And I did a blog post for Progress a little ways back about why UX is suddenly exploding and the enormous growth and the increase in salaries, for which I'm very grateful, and hourly rates. And I think it's because we used to design our applications based on the database, and then we trained our users. So basically, we designed our users. Well, now with the internet and reaching all these people, we can't possibly train.
Mm-hmm.
We can't afford to design our users anymore. We can't afford to do training. We need our, I mean, think of all those courses you took in how to use Amazon. Right. My point. And that's what got me sucked into UX.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Honestly, like it hits so deep when like I love that about designing your users. And like I honestly, when I was raised in the young JavaScript web, it was UX was already like starting to pick up. And so for me, I had no idea where it originated from. The opposite of this, I guess, the antithesis of like designing your user. Like I actually laughed when you said that we had to train our users because I'd never heard of such a thing. Like
Yeah.
you design a system and then you go teach people how to use.
I'm very old.
That is the coolest thing. Did you get to do any of the trainings yourself? I've never heard of this. That's so cool. Like
Well, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, I mean, when I started programming, we didn't even have ones. We had to do everything with zeros. Uphill, both ways. That's a good part of my consulting practice now is, in fact, training.
okay.
And at the conferences were a natural extent. Let me tell you how I got started with conferences. I was writing for a magazine called Advisor, and they put on 2 or 3 conferences every year, and I was bugging them to get into the conferences. And Jeannie Hawkins, who ran the conference, calls me up and says, Peter, I've got a slot for you. I said, great. She said, we've spent all our money. I said, fine. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. You'll have to pay to get down there. Excellent. I can give you a hotel room. Great. Can't give you an honorarium. I said, super. Do you want to know what you're presenting on? I said, if you think it will make a difference. And that got me into doing conferences. So when I went out on my own, and then shortly after that, I did 2 sessions at another conference. And I went, as any good consultant does, the next thing that went through my head was, how am I going to make money off of this? And I realized that there were training organizations out there. And based on the conferences, based on experiences, training users to use the applications we were inflicting on them, I said, you know, I can probably do that training thing. And
do you always take feedback back though? Like if you do a training session, do you always go back to the developer with a list?
it depends on the application. I do a lot of Azure training.
Okay.
I'm reasonably confident no one is listening to me. So, no, my goal is as an instructor, my goal is how can I make this body of knowledge make sense to our user? I mean, it's still a UX experience, really. Here, when people who write courses, they often they love the technology and they're busy trying to explain the technology to you. And about 25% of the audience is sufficiently geeky or nerdy that they just want to know about the technology. They just want to know about the technology. But most of the people who are facing the front of the room or looking at you out of the camera, they have a problem, right? And they want a solution to that problem. Often my job, both as a course author and as an instructor, is to say, here's this wonderful technology. Why don't we start with why you care? You know, why don't we talk about the problem? And let's draw a bright gold line between how you're going to solve that problem and variations of it using this technology. And that seems to work.
That's wonderful. I love that so much. Are you teaching on a platform? Like, can people find you?
One of the things I discovered is I have no marketing skills whatsoever. I have no planning skills. I have no marketing skills. When I went out on my own, I had a fabulous team back when I was head of the IT department. I mean, they were just, when I quit, the company hired me back to continue to run the department 26 weeks out of the year. That'd be half the time they didn't need me there. And I actually, quite frankly, I think we could have gone to 13 weeks and it would have been fine. Just needed someone to come in at the end of every month and make up the reports. But never mind. I wasn't going to turn down 26 weeks of work in the first year of my consultant practice. For me, the issue is always, how do you connect with the people who are interested in the knowledge that you've accumulated? And that's training, that's UX, that's but on the other hand, that's what I'm focused on. How do I connect the knowledge to the people? Marketing, planning. When I quit, I said, you know what? I'm consultant practice. It's just me. No, I'm not going to manage anybody. And with one exception, I've succeeded. You got to set your goals right. So no marketing, no planning. And so I let everybody else handle my marketing. You guys, for example, are marketing my talk on dealing with the neurotypical. Thank you very much.
So excited.
Very much looking to coming to Sophia. Is it Sophia or Sophia?
I've heard both. We need to get the natives, the locals, to tell me which is right, because I say Sophia, but that's actually a really good question. Are we saying it properly?
I'm coming for the whole week. I'm only slightly concerned that TripAdvisor tells me the top 5 attractions are all churches or monasteries.
Nah, pish pop. Hey, listen, nobody likes TripAdvisor, all right? There's the graffiti tour. There's Rakia. Are you going to be able to do the adventure? We're going to do an adventure on Friday where if speakers can stay an extra day, we're going to go to Plovdiv, which is the oldest city in Europe. There's like actual Roman ruins, just like hanging out and
so
older.
There.
Yes.
So I'm a contractor. I sold my contracting services to a big training organizations, and they handle the marketing, and they handle the logistics, they handle the infrastructure, and I focus on delivering knowledge to people.
That's awesome. Hey, you mentioned your talk about dealing with the neurotypical, but I don't know if everyone knows the term neurotypical or even neurodistinct. I was wondering if you could define those for us.
Sure. I'm on the Asperger's spectrum myself. I guess I should say I'm on the autism spectrum. I'm used to what they used to call an Asperger's kid. My youngest son is also on the spectrum. He's also an Asperger's kid. So we're the Aspergate. Rock on. He came up with it. I'm just stealing it.
I need a cool name. Me and my son both have ADHD, and my mother as well. But I think
we got to be able to do something with that.
Your team name is much cooler than I need to come up with one. So you both, like, did you know right away, like when you had him?
No.
I'm like seeing little signs with Daniel, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to talk about this.
There's a wonderful comedian named Taylor Tomlinson who has a fabulous shtick. She got diagnosed as bipolar, and she talks about how when she told her friends, she figured it'd be a big shock to them and everything, and they went, "Oh no, that actually connects a lot of dots." She said her best friend said, "You know, it's sort of like your middle name. I know you have one. I just don't know what it is." So it's bipolar. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, yeah.
So I was always the weird kid, right? And then my youngest son was weirder than me, so he got a diagnosis. Again, going back to Taylor Tomlinson, she said when she was young she had a lisp, and the reason she was telling the audience this was because no one told her till she'd had it for about 2 years, and she said, "Well, I don't think so. I'm out here crushing it." And that was my attitude. Anyways. But once the diagnosis came in and got diagnosed myself, I went, "Oh, that does connect a lot of dots." And what I realized, they talk about high functioning people on the spectrum, and that's a mistake, I think, because what happens is there's always compensations, or if you're low in one area, you'll be high in another. My youngest son, for instance, 42 years old. I don't think he still counts on his fingers, but his math skills were always like off the chart at the bottom. On the other hand, his reading skills were off the chart at the top. So when people talk about high functioning, it's a mistake. There's going to be high functioning areas and low functioning areas, and life's just like that. My high functioning area was that, for example, I noticed that the world is distinctly silly, and I'm the person who points it out. And everybody goes, "You're right. That's silly. That's funny. I have a different view of reality, and that turns out to be something that's useful to bring to the table." So neurodistinct, ADHD, autism, all of these ranges are people who are neurodistinct. By definition, everybody who doesn't fall into that range is neurotypical, right?
Okay.
So neurotypical are the people about whom there is nothing interesting to say. I'd be the first person to admit it's not their fault. I mean,
Really?
the best they can.
I feel like I like to blame people.
Well, it's like some of my best friends are Americans. It's not their fault. I blame their parents,
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so neurotypical by definition are the people who are not distinctive in any way. You're not it must just be a crushing burden, Oh yeah, well, what's interesting about me is there's nothing interesting.
I'm very normal. Yes.
But because they form the 75-80% of the population, all of society is geared to support the neurotypical. It works the way neurotypical people expect, the services that are available, the services neurotypical people need. If you are neurodistinct, by definition, you are a small part of the population. Amazingly, I mean, it's just remarkable. It's like the world is not set up to make sure that it will work for you. Anyways, the point of the talk is for those of us who are special, who are neurodistinct, what can we do to help out the neurotypical people? Because they are doing the very best they can. And we should try to understand their issues and give them the support, give the neurotypical people the support they need to take advantage of us. And that's
I cannot wait for your session. I'm gonna make sure we're emceeing, me and Catherine are emceeing, and so I'm gonna fight for like who gets to, like make sure, like, because one person's always
cat fight.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not supposed to say that out loud anymore.
Oh, I have so many sayings like that, like dad jokes. I'm really good at dad jokes, but my friends are always like parental puns, and I'm like, oh, it's so hard with nouns and remembering. Oh, so you mentioned some things you're looking forward to. Is this your first time in Bulgaria for DevReach?
It is my very first time in Bulgaria. I'm a compulsive reader. I've been busy reading up on Bulgarian authors. I'd read maybe 3 or 4 books from Bulgaria prior to this. I've got a couple of books of Bulgarian history and Bulgarian culture. And now I'm looking around for some art books. So when I arrive, I am not completely clueless. My goal is never to know everything. My ability is to be able to hold up my end of a conversation.
Oh my gosh.
And
I feel like you're going to be leading it. You're going to do so much already. Like, spoilers here, spoilers.
And we got to find great restaurants. That's the key thing.
Oh, I know.
My father said that my wife and I were an army that traveled on our stomach. And Jan's coming along. And we've got some friends from England who have been in Bulgaria and Middle Europe before, and they will prevent us from doing extraordinarily stupid things. And we're just looking for all the things that we can take advantage of while we're in Bulgaria. Okay. Adventures, we're going on that. That's not.
That's wonderful news. And I'm going to. We're like, do we need 1 bus? Do we need 2? So I'm going to add you guys to the list.
Excellent.
Honestly, it's a very beautiful city. Both Sofia and Plovdiv are, so I cannot wait to share them both with you and to see you up on the DevReach stage. Last question. I want to wrap on a fun note.
All right.
Kind of weird one, maybe. If I wave a magic wand and suddenly, instead of 24 hours a day, we have 25, what do you spend the extra hour doing?
Reading.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
What are you going to read? Like
I typically
fiction,
have
nonfiction, code. Like
I typically have 7 or 8 books on the go. I've been trying for the last 20 years or so to read more fiction because it helps me understand people better. You'll notice I have a whole bunch of Bulgarian authors' books lined up. I have 1 book on history and 1 book on culture, and I'm looking forward to picking up some books on art. But
will you send me your Bulgarian book list so that I can do some studying of my own? I feel like that's such a good idea. You've inspired me.
You've got a leg up there. Bulgarian author just won a major prize, I think the Booker, and it's for a wonderfully weird book called Time Shelter. I'd read an earlier book of his called Natural Novel, and it was good too. But Time Shelter is just a great, great book.
Oh, I'm pulling it up. Time Shelter. Excellent. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Peter, this has been such a cool interview. Do you know like you're like a really cool person? Do you know that? Like
That seems unlikely. I mean, look at it. I was born in the middle of the 20th century, in the middle of Canada, in this little city called Regina, Saskatchewan, in the middle of the prairies where the land stretches out forever. I am so not ready for the 21st century. Well, witness, I thought this was dancing. So, you know.
I second that motion. That is dancing. So I also am teaching my prodigy that's dancing. So it's
actually, and the next thing is once I get to Bulgaria is digging up Bulgarian music, not just folk and traditional music, but there's the jazz that comes out of that area of Europe is pretty darn amazing.
Oh my
and I'm looking to come back.
So we should like try to find like a little live band or something.
That goes beyond perfect. That we are now striving for the ideal.
Okay, excellent. I'm adding it to the to-do list. I feel like my crack team of aces can make this happen.
You are a wonderful person. I want you to know I feel so badly about listening to all the terrible things your team said about you.
I believe it. They're smack talkers.
Again, it's not their fault. They're doing the best they can.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to do this interview, and I cannot seriously wait to see you on stage. So thank you, Peter. We're going to wrap this interview. Any last words for the audience?
My motto is very simple. One of my heroes was Secretariat, the horse that won the Kentucky Derby. When Secretariat finished the final lap and crossed the finish line, he was still accelerating. He did every quarter of the track faster than the previous quarter. I think that should be our goal.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you, Peter, so much. We'll see you very soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.